Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, we had some technical problems, but I'm glad we're back. In the meantime, we had some technical problems. I finished this part of the whiteboard, so it saves me some time now to explain that. When we sorry, I forgot. So I think we left our discussion or the presentation here in February. And I want to move on to September now. So February marks the beginning of the invasion. We see Russia standing up against Ukraine. And we see the world standing up against Russia. The thing that I want... Oh, wow, excuse me. I'll start again. Okay. Welcome back. We had some technical problems, but we will continue our study here. We left our study here in February, as we had some technical problems. I already wrote down this part, but I'll explain later. So in February, we marked the invasion of Ukraine. But I especially want to mark the Declaration of Independence and this event in the United Nations Security Council. Because it's in this time period in February where the world recognizes that Biden was actually right. Biden said from the beginning that Putin is going to invade, a full-scale invasion, and you cannot trust him. And in that information warfare already defeated the King of the South. But the rest of the world wasn't sure about that. And it took until February for them to realize that Biden was right. So here at the United Nations Security Council, we see this council representing the world, I'm suggesting. Standing up against Russia. And I'm saying that is fulfilling the characteristics of Concord. Where Egypt sends its ambassadors to Rome. Egypt here, a symbol for the world, giving its credit to the King of the North. Because of what happened here, because here we remember Pyrrhus, right? Pyrrhus was defeated by Rome. When Egypt heard that Pyrrhus was defeated by Rome, they sent ambassadors to start diplomatic relations. And I'm saying that that beginning here starts in this time period. It's where the world recognizes what happened here. And I also think it is what you can see the beginning, or yeah, I'm calling for now. I'm calling it the beginning of the rise of the Seventh Kingdom. And the world needs to. The world in this time period, the world is in a process of starting diplomatic relations with the Seventh Kingdom. And 2021 marks the beginning of it, and the world realizes that in this history, this waymark. So I want to move to September now. Between February and September, the invasion takes place. And the two goals that Putin had with the invasion placing a pro-Russian government in Ukraine, and take those eastern provinces in the Donbas region. They all failed. The whole invasion failed. So in my German, in the presentations I did in Germany, I'll go over that in detail. And there we see that in September, the two armies enter into a stalemate. Since this time, that means since this time period, the armies aren't really going forward or backward. They're kind of like locked in their place. And Putin realizes that the invasion failed. And therefore to save his face, I would suggest, he starts a party in Moscow and tells the world and the rest and the people in Russia that they annex those provinces. Even though he did not even have that territory yet. They were still fighting over that territory. But in Moscow, they had a party and they claimed the territory. On the same day, the United Nations Security Council comes together and they declare the annexation and also the referenda that took place in this time period. They declare them false, not valid. And again, Russia vetoes this resolution. So they again break Article 27.3. So with those articles, I'm only suggesting that there is this symbol of 273 in this waymark. That's the waymark. That's the symbol that Elder Tess placed on this waymark. September the 30th is also the 273rd day of that year. But I think that the most important part of this waymark, there's several parts of this waymark that are important. So the first important characteristic of this waymark is that the world comes into concord on what happened here. And that also represents Egypt's, or the world giving credit to the King of the North. And starting diplomatic relations with the Seventh Kingdom. The other part that is important is the situation where Putin is here at this waymark. Because Panium we mark as the deadly wound of the King of the South. Which leads to the death at the end. Beneventum or Panium is also a Boston. So it also marks the beginning of the death of the King of the South. But a Boston in it, the element that is a Boston, you often cannot really see. It's invisible still. So in 2021, you cannot see the death of the King of the South. I'm suggesting in 2022, you can see it. At Exeter, the next waymark is going to be formalized. And then at the next waymark, it is reality. So in 2021, Putin takes a decision to invade Ukraine. And that basically is already the death or the defeat, I would say, for the King of the South. And you can really see it here, because here Putin loses, or the King of the South, this invasion completely fails. And Russia is now in a position where they cannot solve their own problem. Somebody else needs to solve the problem in Ukraine for them. And the only one that can help them is the King of the North. So if the King of the North is the only one that can help you, um, as the King of the South, you're basically a loser in this battle. So I'm going to the next waymark, and I'll hope to finish these stories, and then it may become clearer. So I'm suggesting that 2024 is Exeter. From July to November. In this time period, we see the King of the North starting to fix the problem for the King of the South here. So here in July, a friend of Donald Trump is going to visit Putin. His friend is Viktor Orban, a European prime minister or president of Hungary. Yeah. So, but we should realize that this Orban is really a puppet here of the King of the North, of basically of Donald Trump. In 2024, Trump is not in an official position yet. So he's not really able to do anything. But he's running for president, and he hopes to be president somewhere in 2025. But in the meantime, Trump sends Orban to Putin to start the negotiations and to start the talking about a solution in the Ukraine war. Um, and this is going to be, oh no, before I go there, when we look at the characteristics of Exeter, of a general Exeter, then an Exeter is always a smaller version of what is going to happen at the next big waymark. And an Exeter is a midnight cry, or is a loud cry. The people here that cry have they do see something, and they warn the world for it. They see it already happening here, and they know what is going to happen there. That's what an Exeter is. So in this story of the King of the North and the King of the South and Ukraine, is Exeter is the mini version of what we usually call the Sunday Law Waymark. So here the negotiations and the talking process starts by Trump. But that's Trump without power, not in office. Now in 2025, Trump is in office. And since last month, February, this process of negotiations started. So we don't know yet how this will happen and what exactly will happen. But one thing I think is sure is that the United States is taking control of this situation. And even though the media in general is talking about the fact that Putin is the winner in this whole situation right now, that Putin is very happy at the moment because of what Trump is doing or what Trump is saying. But we should not forget that Trump is the one that is in the lead. Putin cannot do anything without the how do you say that? Cannot do anything without Trump agreeing, confirming or agreeing with it or not. So there's really a power imbalance here that Trump is leading this and Putin just has to listen to Trump. We should not forget another a battle between the King of the South and Ukraine. Ukraine is a sphere of influence. It wanted to be in the spheres of influence of the King of the North. And the King of the South tried to change that. It wanted to have the King of the South. The King of the South wanted to have Ukraine within its spheres of influence. And I think that failed. Ukraine is in the spheres of influence of the United States, and it will stay there. So the controversial, it's a nice story, the one that I just addressed here on the board, but the controversial part is those two dates here. Because Elder Terry, the primary Sunday law speaker, or that the first Sunday law speaker, has placed 2024, especially July to November. She places it here at the Sunday law. So within this line, I'm saying this is 2024's Exeter. So I'm suggesting, based on this line, that the um, the waymark that Elder Terry addresses as Sunday law is actually Exeter. The events that she addresses here in July, the RNC, and everything connected to it are valid. But they're Exeter and not Sunday law, is what I'm saying. And to use the words that Elder Terry used last week, in her presentation last week, she did for the Dutch ministry. She says that the events taking place here at the RNC and then the events taking place here in January of 2025 in the inauguration when you look at those events, then you can see that they are almost the same. But to use the words of Elder Terry, here in January, what took place was the RNC, but then on steroids. So basically, she's saying January was much stronger, was even more clearer, was bigger compared to what you saw at the RNC. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. This is the mini version. This is the bigger version. This is the real version. This is Exeter. This is Sunday law. She was talking in terms of the manosphere that was how do you say that? Was demonstrated in the RNC and the manosphere that was demonstrated at the day of the inauguration. I know Elder Terry has suggested that there is a difference between in the past we talked about Sunday law, and now she says she made a distinction between national Sunday law and worldwide Sunday law. So we have many lines, especially for example, the lines of Pyrrhus. They end with midnight, midnight cry, Sunday law. And now the Terry suggests, well, this Sunday law is a little bit more complicated. It's actually a little bit bigger than just this one waymark. Because we have a national Sunday law and a worldwide Sunday law. So Elder Terry suggested that if that this death of the King of the South is actually not taking place at the national Sunday law, but at the worldwide Sunday law. And I can accept that. But in my mind, that doesn't solve the problem or doesn't change something to this story. So if this is the national Sunday law, I'm then suggesting that here the national Sunday law, the King of the South of influence as the beginning of its final death at the worldwide Sunday law. This story starts with Ukraine, and it ends with Ukraine. Losing Ukraine as a sphere of influence doesn't necessarily mean the death of the King of the South. We see at the moment, right now, as we watch the news, that we see the power that the United States or the King of the North has over the King of the South and over all the other nations in the world. So we can see this is a process. We don't see the full glory of it, so to speak. And so we don't see the final blow or at the moment in this year at Russia. I can still see the losing Ukraine as a sphere of influence at this waymark, the national Sunday law, and the final death at the worldwide Sunday law. So that was already part of a question. I received a question also from this group, from someone from this group. Mhm. So the question is, I'm focusing here on beneventum to the National Sunday Law. But where do you actually mark the beginning of this story? The questioner says, isn't this story bigger than only this dispensation, these 4 waymarks? And, my answer is yes, I agree. It's bigger than this story. So Elder Tess explained this story in the line of Pyrrhus. So I'm not going to draw the whole story, but we know that Pyrrhus, it has an alpha history and an omega history. And the omega history is Pyrrhus in Italy. And that story starts where there is this Greek city-state in southern Italy that appeals to Rome for help. So we mark this, and that city was Thurii. Thurii appeals to Rome. We mark that as 1989 because this is also the point where Ukraine starts to appeal to Europe. It is the point where Ukraine separates itself from the USSR and turns to the West. In this story, Thurii was part of the spheres of influence of one major city, another city which was called Tarentum. And because of Thurii appealing to Rome, Tarentum, Mhm. Tarentum attacks Thurii. Because Tarentum wants Thurii to be in its spheres of influence and not in Rome's spheres of influence. So this is I'm a bad draw, but if this is Italy, then this is Rome, this is the north. And there's Greek city-states here in the south. They're part of Greece. So this one city here, Thurii, goes to Rome and asks for help. And this other city, Tarentum, which is the main and the most important city in this area, I would say Tarentum here is the king of the south, and Rome the king of the north. Tarentum now attacks Thurii because it wants to keep it in its spheres of influence. So Elder Tess lined this up with 2014. 2014 is where Russia invades Ukraine the first time. So at these two waymarks, we must realize that at these two waymarks, Pyrrhus is not part of the story. Pyrrhus only arrives here. Now here, Pyrrhus takes control of Tarentum. So there is this dynamic here where Tarentum is the king of the south and Pyrrhus is the king of the south. So this line, the one that we have been looking at today, starts here at 2021. It's only a small portion of, I would say, I suggest the line that starts here in 1989. The line of Pyrrhus starts with Ukraine. And I'm suggesting also ends with Ukraine. Here at the Sunday Law waymark, all the way at the end, we mark, or Elder Tess marked, several symbols. I'll write them here. Number one is Pyrrhus dies. Pyrrhus dies when he's 46 years old. So we have the number 46. Oh, sorry. So this is in the year, historically, this is in the year 272. And then the other thing is, so Pyrrhus dies when he's 46 years old. In 272, it's also Rome that controls the whole of Italy now. So Rome controls Italy. And 4 is, I guess that's part of it, but also in 272, it is Tarentum that falls. One second. Yeah, and then we have Rome sending its ambassadors to Egypt. But this one is contested. But I'll leave that. I'll leave that for not part of this discussion. So this waymark, National Sunday or Sunday law in general, either National Sunday law, Worldwide Sunday law, or both, we have 4 to 5 symbols or characteristics that we can place at that waymark. And there is also some elements that are, how do you say that? Double. I'll explain that. So, for example, number 1, Pyrrhus dies. We always marked at the death of the king of the south. But if you look at this history here, this time period on the line of Pyrrhus, we also see Tarentum as being the king of the south. So in 272, we see also Tarentum falling. And we see Rome taking control over all the spheres of influence of Tarentum. So there's 2 to 3 elements there that are telling a similar story. They all tell the story of a fall of the king of the south. Tarentum falls, Rome takes control of Italy, and Pyrrhus dying. And I'm still in a process for myself to understand where those 3 characteristics can be placed. But one thing that I'm suggesting is that the death of Pyrrhus is something different than Tarentum falling. So if we mark the death of Pyrrhus at the worldwide Sunday law, in 272, but we also mark National Sunday law as 272, that's what Elder Terry suggests. Then I'm only saying that if we place the death of the king of the south or the death of Pyrrhus here, that's not the same thing as Rome takes control over the spheres of influence or Tarentum falls. I'm suggesting that takes place here at the National Sunday law. And if that is the case, then this model still stands. We can have the death of Pyrrhus at the worldwide Sunday law, and the loss of Ukraine at the national Sunday law. Okay, I hope that clarified it a bit. There was another question. So the question is, in the original story of Pyrrhus, we have, we mark Beneventum here. We mark 273 here. And then we mark either Argos or Tarentum falling here. And the question is, what is in the real story, in the story of Pyrrhus, is there an event connected to this waymark? And well, the answer is I don't have one. Elder Tess didn't have one. But that doesn't mean that there is perhaps an event. But I think the structure of our lines demands us to have a waymark here, even though it's not in the line of Pyrrhus. When you look at this line of Pyrrhus, it jumps over many waymarks. It goes from 1989 straight to 2014. Then you have 2016, 18, and 19. And then it jumps straight to 2021. And the two little waymarks between 19 and 2021 are not part of that message either. So I don't think we need it, but there might be something. I see there's a question in the chat. How does this threat of Ukraine, which is the king of the north and the king of the south, give us both the timing and the nature of the national Sunday law in the United States? Oh, sorry, it's in the chat. Can you see it? You can't see it? Oh, sorry. Okay. So how does this threat of Ukraine give us both the timing and the nature of the national Sunday law? So I'm saying this story gives us at least the time, it gives us only the timing of the national Sunday law. It doesn't tell you anything about the nature of the Sunday law. The story of the Sunday law or the nature of the Sunday law is a different story, it's a different thread. And I don't want to take away from the things Elder Terry is teaching on it. I lost my translator. Are you there? Yeah, I don't want to take away from what Elder Terry is teaching on the Sunday law. So the nature of the Sunday law, I would suggest and watch those presentations. I'm trying to, let me say, adjust the timing of it. And I think Elder Terry's message still stands, even though you can still remain standing when you adjust the time, when you move it from here to Exeter. Are there any other questions? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. You want to translate that? So before I go there's people that are not in the Shauna channel, so they may not have heard your question in English and not in Shauna. Is that correct?
Yes,
Because
that's correct. And there's others who are not connected to the Shona channel and are only hearing English. So you might need to repeat the question.
okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, I'll
Thank you.
I'll summarize or repeat the question as I understood it. So Justina asks, at least that's what I understood from it. I think Justina asks, is there another story, another line or another story that explains the events of this waymark? Is that a good recollection of your question? Okay. So I think that is the same question that I got earlier about what is the story. It's similar to the other question because of the blue question mark that I have here. So in the line of Pyrus, there is no event connected to this waymark. So Justina asks, is there perhaps another story or another line that establishes the events of this waymark? And I think my answer will be the same as I did before. I don't think we necessarily need that. Because I think the only thing that we have to establish this waymark is this structure of Boston, Concord, Exeter. So we always have this structure. A Boston, a Concord, an Exeter. A Boston, a Concord, and an Exeter. So if you have a Boston and a Concord, then there must be an Exeter following. And if you want to understand this Exeter, another way of doing that is by going to other Exeters to see what an Exeter in general looks like. And I think that this is how I established this waymark by looking backwards to other Exeters. If you put all the Exeters on top of each other, they will tell you a story. There's a certain characteristic that you see at many, or if not all, Exeters. And that's how this waymark is established. Is that okay? Second question, okay. I'll repeat what you say, then others can hear it as well. So you say you are threading the story of the king of the north and the king of the south. Okay. Mm-hmm. Eastern Front. Okay. Okay. So the question is, my story starts with an Eastern Front story, and then here in Exeter, July, it becomes a Western Front issue. So how can I go from Eastern Front into Western Front in the same line? Is that your question? Yeah, she translates. Thank you. I'm I'm not 100% sure about your question, because your first question was about this Orban and Trump and visiting Putin. So you recognize this part of the waymark as well, right? That Orban visits Putin and Trump calls Putin and they start to start negotiations. So that is my Eastern Front part of the story. Elder Terry deals with the Western Front. So she has a story that starts here all the way in the beginning, and it leads us all the way to Sunday Law as well. And she marks the RNC here in July as an important event. And yes, that's Western Front, but it's part of a different story. That's not part of this Eastern Front story. But in the same month, in the very same month, the negotiations with Putin started. Does that clarify it, or? Aha, okay. Yes, but because she marks July here. Okay, so yeah, no, I don't mean to make Elder Terry's story about the RNC, etc., part of this story. That's not what I meant. Okay. I see there's another question in the chat. It says, according to Elder Tess, the Sunday Law is about equality and human rights, with women rights at the center. And it's not the story of Ukraine. I think that's what the question is. So I agree, and I think that's what I explained just now. So the story of equality and human rights with women's right at the center is not part of this story. So the Sunday Law is an internal issue within the United States. But there's several other characteristics that we place at the Sunday Law waymark. And one of them is the events connected with the Eastern Front. Or the events connected with the King of the South. So we see the King of the South being involved within the same at the same waymark in the same time period when internally in the America there is this Sunday Law established. there are two different threads. There are two different stories running parallel. And that's why I said in the beginning of the presentation that I don't have a Sunday law message. I'm not talking about the nature of the Sunday law. I'm talking about the timing of the Sunday law, basically. If I'm saying if there's something I say about the Sunday law, then it's only the timing. I hope that answers the question. Are there other questions? Someone is unmuted. You want to ask?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, it's Leah speaking. So I need to ask. So we have been learning about that the king of the north, like the USA, is the one which is taking us to the Sunday law. So I need to ask if we have like you are looking at the Eastern Front, is it also taking us to the Sunday law or?
So you're asking if this line of the Eastern Front brings us to the Sunday law?
Yes, yes.
I'm saying it's bringing us to the Sunday law waymark. This line doesn't tell you anything about the nature of what the Sunday law is. Other people in the movement talk about that. Is that good enough of an answer?
Sorry, can you come again? Your last, what you have said at the last.
So this line of the Eastern Front doesn't tell you anything about the nature of the Sunday law. It doesn't explain what the Sunday law is about. It only explains when it is. Other people in the movement have more to say about what it actually is. Does that help?
Yes, I still have something running up and down in the mind. Thank you. Can I ask something?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so you're saying this line of the Eastern Front is bringing us to the Sunday law, but it's not explaining the nature of the Sunday law. Okay, so I also need to ask, have you ever looked into it, or it just ends there? Like the other lines, for example, if we may look at Elder Terry's presentations, they like take us from, and then it takes us to the Sunday law, and then she explains the Sunday law when it is. And I know you've said that it's taking us to the time. Have you also ever looked into that to say, can it extend into the Sunday law and see the Eastern Front, like how does it look like if it's on the Eastern Front side? If you are looking at the East on the Eastern Front, I don't know if my question is clear.
I think so. I'll give Justina time to translate, and then I'll respond. Okay, so me personally, I have not myself looked into the nature of the Sunday law. I obviously have been catching and keeping up with Elder Terry's presentations. And I think she does a very good job in explaining the Sunday law. It's not just, it's the nature of the Sunday law is just not part of this story. And this is, I always say, this is my specialization, and others will explain the nature of the Sunday law. So I'm sorry if I disappoint you, but I don't have something myself different from Elder Terry or something about the nature of the Sunday law. I'm suggesting that Elder Terry's presentations should, or sorry, Elder Terry's conclusions about the Sunday law should move a waymark back to Exeter. So 2024, the RNC and everything that happens connected to it until November or even December with the elections and the electoral college. I think that's all part of Exeter. And that's all a small version, a mini version of what happens in 2025. So here in 2024, you see Trump being crowned as head of the Republican Party. A small version of the big thing. In January, he was crowned as President of the United States. And then everything we see happening here in this time period, I think, is part of the National Sunday Law waymark. And the rest is still future. But like I said, that's actually not part of my story. Of course, I know it's connected, but it's not part of this story that I have to tell. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome. Yep. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So I'll repeat your question for those who didn't hear it. So the question is, why do you want Elder Terry to move her Sunday law into your Exeter? Is it only to fit your model, or because Elder Terry has an Exeter and has a Sunday law? So why do you want her to move the Sunday law back to Exeter? Yes, I understand Elder Terry has her own Exeter in her own line, in her own story. She has, I think it was May 30 as Exeter. So then it's May 30, 2024 as Exeter, and July 18 as Sunday, National Sunday Law, 20, but also 2024. So the reason why I say that I think Elder Terry should move her Sunday Law to an Exeter, that it's an Exeter, is that I think, it's because of what I said in the beginning of my presentation, that all the all the characteristics of a waymark must happen in the same time period. And mostly, I think we mark it in the same year. So 9/11 happened in September. The first gay marriage was in April. But it was both in 2001. So I think when we do an eastern front line and a western front line, that also those events, or the waymark, that the events that we connect to the waymark should be in the same time periods. For example, here in 2022, the Dobbs v. Jackson court case was there in June. So this is the overturning of Roe v. Wade. It's about abortion. But this is Western Front. So this is June. So this is somewhere in the same time period that I marked February to September. So Elder Terry here says it's May 30. And here she says it's July 18, 2024. And here it starts to walk out of sync. Because I have July here. So Western Front says July 18 is here. And I'm saying the Eastern Front, July 18 or July is here in Exeter. So Elder Terry says, no, you should move this July to Sunday law. And I say, no, you should move your July back to Exeter. We'll come to a solution, and I guess we need time to settle into it. Yeah. Okay. It was clarified. Okay, I see another question in the chat. Two, actually. Does the presentation today tell us about the timing of the worldwide Sunday law? Or is it only the highlights of the timing of the national Sunday law? Okay, good question. So, no, this is not about the worldwide, not about the timing of the worldwide Sunday law. The discussion is about the national Sunday law timing. Let me add a little bit to this. Because one of the arguments that Elder Terry has for May 30 to be Exeter because she marks May 30 because this is where she presented or recorded and presented for the first time her July 18 or her July message. Because one of the characteristics of Exeter is that we see time. And Elder Terry says, well, there was time on May 30 because I predicted the Sunday law. And that's fair. That's a fair argument. I only want to add to this that on the line of the 144,000, Penium is Exeter to the Sunday law. So you have 2001 and Sunday law, and in between you have two smaller waymarks, that's Raphia and Penium. And Penium is Exeter. And at Panium, we had a time element. Elder Tess, in her study on X27, you remember the study where, or the story where they are in this ship and they start to measure how far they are away from the island or from shipwreck. And they started to measure fathoms. I don't forget I forgot the numbers. And if you recalculate this into inches, it was 2520 inches. And Elder Tess recognized the 2520 and said the 2520 is a symbol of time. We have time here at Panium. They were measuring how far away they were from shipwreck. And the answer was 2520. Or 2025. So there's a time element, and maybe you should, I don't know, don't shoot me, but maybe it's juggling with numbers. Maybe you think this is juggling with numbers. And maybe you're right. But if, oh, sorry. Someone is calling me. So maybe this is juggling with numbers, and maybe you're right. But if you don't want to accept this, then you need to go to Quintus and make that Quintus Fabius Maximus Gurgius and have to make that July 18, 2024. And you need to go through some hoops there as well to get to that answer. So that's something that you should decide for yourself. But the timing at the moment, to go back to the question, the time that we talk about is about National Sunday Law. So I'll go to the next question if that was good enough. I'm not sure if I understand the question. So Thury had an outdoor helper, which was Rome. And Tarentum also had an outdoor helper, which was Pyrrhus. The king of the south. And then the question is, today, is it not that the aggressor is also the king of the south? Tarentum is Russia, king of the south is Russia. I don't understand the question. So maybe clarify it, or is there another question?
Hi, Arjan.
Hi.
Yeah, I want to try to elaborate a bit on my question. I am asking where you say the Tarentum is the king of the south. Uh, and you explained before that those were the colonies of Greece. So in that context, is not Greece the king of the south?
So,
If those are the colonies of Greece.
Justina, can you repeat what you understood from the question? The audio is not so good at my end. Yes. I don't think I don't think he hears you. So my audio wasn't so good that I could understand. I asked Justina, but she cannot repeat the question either. But it is about, okay, okay, yeah. Can you repeat your question? Then Justina will repeat it as well after you.
Okay. I'm asking about where you say Tarentum is the king of the south. We had earlier, when you introduced that, uh, Tarentum and Turi were part of Greek states or colonies of Greece. So how is Tarentum king of the south? That's what I want to understand. Because I thought the king of the south is Greece.
Okay, thank you for your question. You need to translate it into your language still? Okay, so yes, I agree that Thurii and Tarentum, and there were others, they were all Greek city-states. But Tarentum was the biggest and most influential in the area. And when Thurii appealed to Rome, that was not accepted by Tarentum, and Tarentum fought back and took Thurii. Because it didn't want to lose Thurii. Thurii was part of the sphere of influence. So here in this small story, it's not necessarily, it's not about Greece. It is really about those players here. And here, when Tarentum takes Thurii, this is what Elder Tess um, marked as 2014, where Russia takes Ukraine. So Tarentum there is the king of the south. And then later we have Pyrrhus as a supporter, or yeah, you could say, our helper, you said in your question. I'm not sure if that clarifies your question.
Yeah, partly so I understand. I think I will get more flesh as we go. Thank you so much.
Can you repeat that, Justina? What did he say? Okay. Oh, sorry. And thank you. You're welcome. Are there other questions? If not, then perhaps it would be good to leave it here and close with prayer. Okay, let's close with prayer. Dear Lord, Lord, we thank you for this opportunity to study together. Thank you for the proper and good connections that we've had this morning. And despite the little technical issue that we had, we could have a proper study together. Thank you that you guided us and was with us this Sabbath morning. I pray, Lord, for this group in Zimbabwe. That you will help them to settle into the truth. That this exercise of inviting international speakers may solidify their position on the Sunday law. And that this group may become firmer and stronger in their position. But also, Lord, that this group may grow closer together as friends, as a family. To study together, to have unity, but not only to settle into the truth intellectually, but also spiritually. Because, Lord, only studying about or thinking about the timing of the Sunday law is just one part, is just one thing. Just as important is the nature of the Sunday law and recognize it and settle into it. I pray this group in Zimbabwe will be blessed in the next sessions as well. I thank you that I could be part of the worship this morning. We thank you and we praise your name in Jesus' name. Amen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, my device went off, so I had to borrow Shafika's device to conclude. Thank you so much, Arjan, for the presentations today and for doing our question and answer.
Yeah, thank you.
We have all been greatly blessed. And I think for each of us, it has given us more homework to go and do as well. So we'd like to thank you once again, and may God continue to bless you as you continue to study out the message and share with us.
Thank you.
That brings us now to the end of our study for today. Thank you everyone for joining in.